So let's discuss going into those difficult emotions that we are afraid of going into. Sadness, depression, despair, feeling like your heart's broken, anger, just pain, just really all those things could be just wrapped up with the one word that we don't really like to use. We definitely don't even want to hear it. Suffering. But if we can go into our suffering, not be afraid, because really what we're doing is we're always running away from it. We're running away from it. That's why we don't really want to be present. Because if we become present, then we have to go into the suffering. We have to come face to face with ourselves. So it's hard. And that's why it requires a lot of courage. It requires courage because we have to go into our suffering. It requires courage to open our heart. And we really open our heart by going into our suffering. That's where compassion is actually born. Compassion is born out of our suffering. Because compassion is about suffering together. How can you... See, it's not even about understanding someone's suffering. A lot of people, we think that suffering is, we just got to feel sorry for them. Like, I'm sorry for your suffering, and pretend like it doesn't even happen. Like there's no suffering going on here. But it's in that suffering that we become compassionate towards ourselves, self-compassion. And it's that self-compassion that's really being born out of this suffering by getting in touch with our own suffering. We're more compassionate. Right? So it requires that courage to open up the heart. We go into the heart. Right? And before we can get to the love, right? We gotta face the pain. The love that you're seeking is actually in that pain. And love is the antidote. Love is the medicine to that pain that we're running from. So it's counterintuitive to the mind. Love is what's needed to mend that broken heart. Love is needed to heal ourselves. But in order to heal ourselves, we have to go into our heart. But we're afraid to really open the heart wide open and go right to the depths of our heart. Because we usually have to face that suffering. Not usually, we do. We have to. There's no question about it. We have to. You can't bypass it. That's one of the traps, I should say, not tricks. It's one of the traps is when we try and bypass it. Let's just try and transcend it. Right? What's the cheat code? How can I just not feel this suffering? You might create some spiritual bypass, but it's always going to be there. There's always going to be, you can't escape it. You can't escape it. That's the work that you cannot opt out of. It's part of being a human being. It's just there. It's to feel that suffering, feel that pain deeply. And that's the alchemy of it, because you're transforming it. You're transforming that pain into power. You're transforming that fear into love. You're transforming the wounds into healing. So the thing is all of us, we know it's there. We know that suffering's there. We don't like to admit it. And that doesn't help us when we can't admit it. We're in denial of our own suffering. It's kind of where a lot of us are. We're in denial. We're not ready for it to come face to face with it. So what we do is we bury our head in the sand, or we try and escape it. We escape it with all sorts of things. Drugs, alcohol, Netflix, you name it, eating, it doesn't matter. Basically, it's like whatever activity that prevents us from just sitting still is our form of escapism. Because if we can't just sit still and just simply just be, it's because what's arising is so uncomfortable. We don't want to deal with that. So we're kind of like, push that down. I'll deal with that another day. Time to go binge watch some Netflix and numb my mind. Because I don't want to think about that. I don't want to be with those emotions. I don't want to feel it right now. Which doesn't help, because in order to heal it, you got to feel it. We have to feel that suffering fully. So I said is we have to really go into it. Feel it fully. Because usually in this suffering, there's a lot of identity that we're wrapped up in. Who is the one that is suffering? We usually have these beliefs of who we are. I'm this type of person. I'm this person. And then it's usually dependent on something. A lot of relationship problems. It's codependency. Dependent on this person. Right? We hear this with this language that we use. They're my better half. Well, what is that saying? One, they're better than you. Two, you're incomplete because you're a half. Three, you need them to feel whole. It says a lot with just a cliche kind of line that we are unconscious of really what we're saying, especially when we believe it to be true, that we need this other to complete us. That's coming from a place of incompleteness, brokenness, wounded. Right? So a lot of times when we're in that place and maybe we feel the other is about to leave us, or we want to leave them, or the relationship is going through some stress, or someone else in your family, a mom or a dad or a brother passes away, dealing with the loss. It's always about this loss, this fear of loss. Because really that's what we're all fearing deep down inside, is this fear of loss. Right? And what is that fear of loss? Really, at its core, it's the loss of everything, the loss of who we think we are, the loss of existing. Right? It's the great death. Because when we die, right, as the separate self, then we lose everything. Our possessions, our relationships. So as we go through life, we're kind of peeling back the layers one at a time. You lose your business, you lose some money, you lose a friend. It starts almost getting kind of closer to you. Like, all right, I can start another business. They're just a dog, just an animal. It's just a friend. I didn't really hang around him too much. Then it almost seems like it starts getting closer. An aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a mother, a brother. It's like it's getting closer, and this fear is now increasing. I'm next, right? But that's all fear really comes down to that, fear of death. But the death of what? Right? The death of who you think you are, which is the death of the separate self. The death of the separate self is also the birth of the universal self, you could say. And it's purely an identity, an identification. It's the death of a thought. It's the death of a thought, right? The death of the ego. It's the ego death. But that, coming back to it, is like that pain, that suffering that we feel, that's really, it's like the invitation to go into this. When you start looking at it, don't analyze it, look at it. Be present with your suffering, be aware. What are you fearing? They're going to leave me. They left me. I've lost my love. I've lost who I am. Who am I without them? I always thought I was a mother or a wife or a husband. Right? It's always about the identity. Losing your sense of self. And that's why all those things, if your identity was a business owner and you lost your business, well, because you're so identified with being a business owner and the business supports your identity as a business owner, well, then when you lose your business, that identity is threatened. It's weakened. It's like there's a big kind of question mark. Well, then, who am I without a business? I was always a business owner, but now without a business, who am I? Right? Comes down to a lot of things. If you're a mother and, hopefully it doesn't happen, but it does. I mean, we can't deny these things. But the child dies. Now who am I? Not a mother. The child made me a mother. The child made me a father. Who am I now? Right? So you see, everything is this kind of falling away that then supports the identity, the I. All these things, the business, and I'm giving different examples, the child, the wife, you and your wife split up, divorce. Who am I now? Right? And there's always this kind of feeling where there's just so much invested. There's so much invested. so much time and energy invested into this relationship, so much time and energy invested into this business, whatever it is. And what the ego, that identification process, what it does is it tries to preserve, right? It tries to build up that sense of self and preserve it. It does everything it can to preserve it. It's going to maintain that business, keep that business going. If there's some sort of challenge in the economy or whatever, it's going to stress and just to keep that thing going, because it can't just let that slide. Can't just let that business fall away. Can't just let that relationship it's going to hold on to that relationship no matter how miserable that relationship is. It's better to have a miserable relationship than it is to have no relationship, because that's even another step closer to that death, that feeling of loneliness, right? The ego always needs something to support it. And as soon as those things, that support system, starts falling away, you feel more and more of that kind of that dread, that terror that comes closer and closer to you. So then it freaks out. I'll find anyone. Let's get married. Let's get in a relationship, right? Try anything just to support. It starts looking for things. Hence, a lot of people midlife crisis. Oh my God, what do I need? Just need to buy a sports car, right? And just all this outward, something to distract from this hole in us that we don't want to feel, this emptiness in us that we don't want to feel. And it's ironic because that emptiness is actually the fullness as well. Doesn't make any sense hearing it right now, but it just is. It just is. But it's to feel that emptiness fully. It's to feel that emptiness fully. You realize that you are that emptiness and you are the fullness at the exact same time. But unless we actually feel it, go in and be with that emptiness, be with that void, go into that void, then we don't, there's no experience of what I'm talking about. Because it's kind of like just opening the door, kind of looking at it. Oh, yeah, that's empty. I'm not going in there. No way. Looks like a gigantic abyss. No way. Shut the door. Run away. Right? What's in that room? Oh, suffering? Yep, not today. I'm running. Here I come, Netflix. What's in there? A whole lot of pain? Well, let me grab the bottle. Right? But the thing is that's what we're doing our entire life. We're doing that our entire life. So when's the day that we get that courage to face our fears? When we get the courage to open our heart. Because it's only when we open our heart that we find the love. You can't find the love if you don't open your heart. And we're so afraid. It's so ironic that we're afraid to that we fear opening our heart. We fear experiencing the love. It's very paradoxical. It's funny if But when you see it as the separate self, it is fear. It is fear. And the universal self is nothing but love. It's universal. It's unconditional love, unity, oneness. But it requires us to open our heart, to have the courage and open our heart. And like I said, is when we open our heart's now open, and we have that compassion for ourselves and compassion for others. Because the compassion is actually the universal self coming through. We're experiencing that's our true nature. It's compassionate. It is compassion. That's why compassion is to suffer together. You start now perceiving the suffering of others. Because you're perceiving your own suffering, you're also in touch with others' suffering. And you're in touch with the others that are suffering through the heart. Because the heart is what unites us all. Because at our very core and our depths of our heart, we are one. Love is what unites us. And fear is what separates us. And it's the fear that actually separates us from what we actually are, which is unconditional love. But this is only discovered by going into the suffering, to stop running from it and going into it. And it's when we go into the suffering that we overcome that suffering, that we feel that suffering. I don't want to say the word transcend. To really transcend anything, we have to accept it. We can't transcend the suffering if we don't accept it. When we accept our suffering, so you passing me suffering, you pass me. I accept it. Well, now it's here. Now I got to deal with it. Thanks a lot, right? It's here. Now I got to deal with it. Well, what do I do? Right? Only thing you can do with suffering is to feel it fully. And it's when we feel it fully, it's when we feel it, we heal it. But as long as you keep on passing me the suffering, you're not actually passing me the suffering, but as long as I keep on rejecting the suffering, denying the suffering, suppressing the suffering, avoiding the suffering, running from the suffering, it's like I'm tricking myself. I'm pretending that it's not here. And all of that activity, that's all activity. But accepting it is a non-activity. It doesn't take, you pass me that teacup of suffering and I accepted it. But what did acceptance look like? It looks like nothing. It looks like no doing. It's right there. Thanks. I didn't have to do anything. Rejecting it is a doing. Avoiding it is a doing. Running from it is a doing. Resisting it, suppressing it is a doing. That's all effort. So that's why this is that access point. Because that realization can happen in the non-doing. where we're just in that state of no effort, that we're just simply still, silent, just being with the suffering. And that's where the magic happens. The magic's not going to happen from running. The magic's not going to happen from avoiding and resisting and suppressing and rejecting. It's not going to happen. Put it this way, that's what we're doing our entire life. So when we look at it this way, I don't want to use it like there's something on the other side, but there is. There is something on the other side. It's like on the other side of suffering. On the other side of that suffering is love. On the other side of death is life. On the other side of fear is love. Right? It's not to make it about trying to strive for the goal, but it's more so just to kind of bring up, I don't know, the motivation, the incentive to go into that suffering. Right? It's not a trick. Wouldn't lie about it. Just see, it's just see clearly that all the things that we're doing is running from that non-effort, just resting to feel it fully. That's why a lot of us we can't rest, actually. There's no peace. We're constantly running, constantly avoiding, trying to escape, looking for something to just numb that pain. Why don't we just feel that pain? Feel that pain. And it's in that feeling of the pain that the pain just is released. So that's what happens with all these emotions that we're trying not to feel. It's like we're a human being. Part of life is these emotions, and we're saying, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that either. I'll pass on that. Today's not a good day. I thought I already felt this. I just don't want to feel that again. Right? That's not living. The feelings, the emotions, they're part of life. They're meant to be felt. Life is just this river, and it's bringing these emotions. And we act like beavers, and we're damming up the stream. I don't want any of that stuff. And then we wonder why our life doesn't feel like it's flowing. We're creating a lot of resistance. But if we go into that suffering, it's like a portal. It's a portal. It feels like the end, but it's also a new beginning. It feels like death. It feels like you're going to die in it. It's just the only thing that's going to die is what you're not. Everything that you're not is going to die. Everything that you're not is going to fall away, and what you are is going to be left. It's like this stripping away. We're always, that's the thing, is everything's getting stripped. The business, the child, the wife, the girlfriend, whatever it is. And you kind of feel like, oh my God, everything's being stripped away. Because at death, everything does get stripped away. Except for one thing. And that one thing isn't a thing. It's what you are. It's your essence. It's the only thing that can't be stripped from you. It's what you are. And what that is eternal. What you are is eternal. What you are is timeless. What you are is changeless. Everything else changes. And what we do is we try and pretend like it's not changing and try and preserve it. We try and maintain it. We try and collect, hold on to it, as if we can like kind of take it with us. Can I just bring all this stuff on the other side? And it's like this, that suffering can be like one of those metal detectors at the airport. You got to empty out all your belongings, your pockets, everything. Right? And the only thing that gets through, in this case, is what you actually are. What you actually are. Which is liberating. Because all the other stuff that you thought you were, you're free from that. Everything's just in that box that they give you. Right? But you're not getting it back. Not really. I mean, it'll still be there. It just won't feel the same. You just won't be identified with it. At the airport, they say, "Sir, you're going to have to take off that watch, give me your phone, your wallet, put it all here in this basket." Right? We'll give it to you on the other side, but we need you to walk through that. Whatever it is. I'm just calling it the metal detector. Right? And the only thing that gets through that is what you actually are. Pure awareness, pure consciousness, beingness, whatever you want to call it. It's nameless. It's formless. That's the only thing that goes through. But it needs to go through this door, this screen, where that everything else that you have identified with doesn't go through. It's a filter. And it's liberating because you thought you were things or something that you were not. But by going through this, then it's, relief, freedom, that you can't describe it in words. I thought I was that. I'm not. And then there's the happiness, the love, the peace, the freedom. And there's no more suffering. Because the suffering was a byproduct of identifying with, go back to the analogy, identifying with the watch. If I was thinking that I was the watch, oh, man, that watch isn't going to last forever. Right? This body's not going to last forever, that's for sure. As long as I believe I'm the body. There's going to be that fear. What happens when it's the end of the body? Anything that's bound by time, it doesn't last. But there's something right here, right now, that's timeless. And that's what you are. And you can discover that by going into the suffering. By going into the suffering where you're not running anymore. You're not running anymore. It's like a magnet. That present moment, you're not running from it anymore. It draws you in. And then you realize that present moment is eternity itself. And eternity is what you are. So let's wrap it up. So it's more of an invitation. I know who invites someone to suffering. Right, here's an invitation for suffering, by the way. Hopefully I'll see you there, RSVP. Right, it's not, but it is. I was going to say it's not like that, but it is. Right? It is. Right? And that's, I got to say, I did it. I did it. Trust me, it's not that bad, right? I can't say it's not that bad, but also it's transformational. Literally transformational. Change, form what you think you are to something that's formless. Transforms you. Crazy metal detector that you walk through and it transforms you. Right? You're going into that thinking you're just the body, and you come out knowing that you're formless. Why don't they install more of those at the airport? But that's what it is. That's why it's like the art of dying before dying. Because when you experience it, you then realize that there is no death. There is no death. There's only a psychological death. There's only a death of a thought. Which is exactly like saying it's the end of a dream. When you're dreaming, it's just it's activity of the mind. When that dream is over, it's just there's no more activity of that mind. Dreaming that dream. It's very similar. But there's something that wakes up. There's something that wakes up. And what wakes up is what you actually are. It's the universe waking up. It's God waking up. I was just pretending to be that character. What a joke. I remember for myself, it was very much like that experience of a joke. Like, good one. Good. I got to give you the narration for the video. It's not like what I was saying at the time, but it's very much like, joke's on me. There's no one else to laugh but myself, right? I'm commentating as the universe here, right? Oh, it was me as the universe the entire time, pretending to be this character, thinking that was it, right? But then it's just this, everything wakes up. Right? The person doesn't awake. There's no awakening for the person. The person is the thought. Being a person is purely conceptual. There's a body here. But you'd say, this is a body and this is a person. No, this is the body. But a person is a concept. And many of us believe ourselves to be a person. And what's that person? The person is a bundle of thoughts, feelings, opinions, desires, projections, positionalities, roles, dogmas, ideas, concepts, that sort of stuff. But what's aware of that? That which is aware of that is more fundamental than the concept, because the concept comes and goes, it changes, it needs to be built up. Oh, let's change that, modify that, new belief, new opinion, new role. Oh, I like that identity. Let's switch identities. I want to play that role now. That personality is different around that person, and then my personality changes around that person. All that stuff it's coming and going. It's temporary. It appears, it disappears. It appears, it disappears. It's not stable. It's not consistent. But that which is aware of all of that, that's consistent. That's permanent. That's what's timeless. That's what you are.